Buddy Mike here, head trader, True Trading Group, and on March 8th, a solid follow-up day to my biggest day of the year so far yesterday. If you guys missed that video yesterday, go back, take a look at it. It was my biggest day of the year, 3 for 3 in that monster BPTH trade. Was a killer. So coming into today, just looking to finish the week on a high note. You know, after my biggest day of the year, I'm just looking to kind of add to that day. And I got excited pre-market because there was a lot of small caps that were making some noise, and I thought maybe that we were going to have some really good small cap action again. But a lot of the small caps that we were looking at pre-market ended up being duds. Okay, they ended up being duds, and you ended up really having to wait and be patient. A couple things we're going to talk about here today is one, why I don't trade off the opening bell and why I think it's better to be patient and not chase momentum off the bell. And we're going to talk about patience, like kind of with a trade, letting a trade work itself out, and how to add back to a position or when to add back to a position after you've already taken profits. So first, guys, I want to show you some of the small caps that gapped up, and everybody got excited when a bunch of these small caps were gapping up because everybody thinks it's the next BPTH. They're all going to run to, $70. So everybody chases that opening bell candle. Okay, everybody chases that opening bell candle. This thing opened up at the high. We opened at 890. The high of the day was 895, and then we just collapsed on TROV all the way down to 650. Okay, that's why I don't chase these opening bell candles, because there's no pattern here. Okay, there's no pattern here. All right, you're putting yourself at an extremely high risk situation. DFFN was another one. This huge gap up. Look at this gap up. We opened at 10. We went to 11, and within minutes we were at 780. Again, there's no pattern here. You're just chasing momentum. Okay, and I don't. That's not how I trade. I don't chase momentum. SAEX, another one. Big gap up here today. Got everybody excited. We opened at 515, hit 550. And within seconds, we were at 450. Okay, again, no pattern here. This is why I don't trade right off the opening bell. I wait. Okay, I wait to see a pattern. I wait so that I can clearly say, this is my stop loss. This is my risk. Okay, you very rarely see me place a trade in the first 5-10 minutes of the day. I let stocks open up. I let them put in their patterns. The noise of the open settles down, and then you get a much clearer idea of if the stock is strong or weak. Rather than right off the opening bell, you have no idea if the stock is strong or weak. So I wait for patterns. That's just my style, my strategy. I know that there's a couple people that are scalpers that like to trade right off the bell, but they're buying at 9:30 even, and they're selling it at 9:30 in 20 seconds. So that's not my style. So some people do that. It's not my style. I wait for patterns. So let's get to this TROV. The other thing I'm going to talk to you about here today, guys, is why it's so important for you to keep your losing trades small. Okay, it's so important for you to manage your risk on losing trades, because I took 2 losses this morning. One in a small tier 1 position, but that goes to keeping my losses small. And I took a loss on a full-size position in BIG. BIG I took a full-size position loss on, and I took a tier 1 loss on SAEX. And then I came back and I got a winning trade on TROV, and that winning trade turns out to be a monster. Okay, I added to the position twice, sold it on the way up. We made new highs. It was a huge trade, but it more than covers my losses in the morning and puts me well into the profit. And I'm coming out with a really nice day on Friday after I had my biggest day of the year yesterday, and that's how it should be. Okay, if you nail a trade, it should more than cover the prior 2 losses. If you absolutely nail a trade. And that's why it's so crucial for you to keep your losses small. I'll take you to SAEX. SAEX, guys, I initially was looking for a potential double bottom gap up pattern at the 50 Fibonacci level. Okay, here was our 50 Fibonacci level. You see we started to hold support in here. And I just thought to myself, I'm just going to get a tier 1 position. Okay, in case this 50 Fibonacci still holds. The trade line was working its way up, and I thought if the trade line came up here and held the stock up, we could have pushed it through VWAP, because VWAP was showing me it was resistance. So I was like, I'll get a tier 1 here. If we get through VWAP, I'll add tier 2, and my first take profit will be right up there in front of the high of the day. That was my game plan. But I just entered a small tier 1 position, okay, in here. I'm taking my trade announcements. Let me zoom in for you. Here you guys see long at tier 1 at 470. My stop loss 450. So I'm in a small tier 1 size, 25% of my desired size, okay, and I'm only risking 20 cents. Okay, I'm only risking 20 cents. You can see I ended up selling out of the tier 1 at 450 about 9 minutes after my entry point, because you can see the low of the day broke, okay, and I stopped out of the position of the tier 1 there at 450. But the point of this is it was tier 1. Okay, I was in small size. I would have added tier 2 if that happened and we broke through VWAP. I would have added to the position. I would have tried to sell some up here around 550. Okay, but it didn't happen. It was a losing trade, but a small loss because I'm only in tier 1. Next, we go to BIG. This was a tough trade. This one actually kind of frustrated me because it ended up going much, much higher, and I ended up getting stopped out. But anyway, what I noticed here with BIG, I'll just walk you guys through my trade, why I got long here. Okay, you guys can see this gap entry. So here we had the big gap down in December. So there's my entry to get into the gap. We gapped into that and above the gap entry point. We pulled in and it held the low of the day. The dead low of the day lines up with that gap entry point. Okay? Look at what happens when I go back intraday. The low when we opened up in the morning. Okay, now before the pull in, we opened up in the morning, I saw this and I said, "Wow, we're holding above that gap entry point." Okay? And then VWAP came into play here, and I got long this right here. Back to my trade announcements, you can see I got long at 35.13, stop loss 34.50 area. VWAP was holding us up, and again, same thing. I was waiting for the trade line to come into play, and it just never did. We broke down below that level, and I stuck to my stop loss, and I exited right there at 34.50. That was a full-size position, so that one gave me and then it's so frustrating because he broke the low of the day and then rallied it up, and I got stopped out of it. But nonetheless, I stuck to my stop loss, so I didn't get crushed on the trade. Yeah, I took a loss on a full-size position, but I didn't get crushed because I stuck to my stop loss. I knew my risk going into the trade. I stuck to that risk, and I exited at that stop loss point, and I stuck to the trade. Because even if I let that go, I'm probably realistically stopping out at a new low of the day, which we did make. Okay, we made a new low before the stock ended up rallying higher. So that one shook me out. That was a tough hold. And then we get to this TROV. Okay, I start to buy. I bought a tier 1 position on this TROV. Okay, because let's do this. Okay, now you guys can see the 50 Fibonacci retracement level lined up right here at the low of the day. Then we bounced off it. We come down here. And then you start to see that this low of the day is starting to hold. The 50 Fibonacci level is starting to hold. So I got long a tier 1 position in front of that level. Okay, let's go back to my trade announcements. Here you guys can see I'm long a tier 1 at 714. My stop loss is 650. But again, I'm in a tier 1 position. I said I'm going to add tier 2 through 760. 760 would have been through these previous highs. Okay, here's your 760. Okay, so when I entered this position, let me actually get the time on that. 9:56. So right there is my tier 1 entry. Okay, so there's my tier 1. And I said I'm going to add through here to try to get a move back up to the high of the day. We didn't do it. We pulled back in. And then what I started to notice, and I'm going to take you guys to a 5-minute chart and show you this nice descending kind of triangle pattern that we had going here. And you can see I was using the 5-minute chart as my basis here, and I said to people in chat, I changed where I'm adding to this position, and I let everybody know, guys, above this downtrend resistance line, I'm adding to this position. So right on this break right here, guys, is where I added to a full-size position. So here's my tier 1. I add to a full-size position. Okay, let's go back to a 3-minute chart. And then we make our move. We start to make our move back up. I was patient with this trade. I didn't jump out of the tier 1. I let the stock do what it needed to do. I gave it the time it needed. I stuck to my stop loss on the trade. It was never triggered. And then I got the move I was finally waiting for, and I was patient with. We'll go back to my announcements. So you guys can see, oh, here's what I sold out, that BIG at 34.50 for that loss. So at 10:46, almost an hour into my my initial tier 1 entry, took some off at 780, took more off at 822, and then took more off at 840. Okay, let's go back to the charts. So I just started taking profits up along here. Right here, I sold kind of my last piece, and I was down to a very small position. Okay, I even said small, I believe. Yeah, here we go. So here you guys can see I'm still holding small. It was only about 10 or 15%, maybe like 12 or 13% of my original position size. And then I said to everybody, go, guys, what we're looking for now, if this VWAP starts to hold support, okay, you also have the 23.6 Fibonacci level sitting there. You had the trade line working its way up. I said, if that starts to hold support, I'm going to add back to this position. And you see that VWAP started to hold the stock up long enough for the trade line to catch up. And right here, I added back to this position, and I caught this nice little extension move up through the high of the day. And that's where you guys can see I, again, started taking more profit off at 872. And then I sold more at 910. Okay, as we started to extend up into this region of new highs. Then I held on to one last piece, and we ended up rolling it over. 770 was my final, was where I sold out of the rest of it when it started to roll back down through here. So once you broke down back below VWAP, I exited that last piece. But this is a good lesson on how you can add back to positions that you've already scaled out of. You have to look for new setups and new patterns. You can't just go ahead and add to the position and then risk it back down to your stop loss on the initial trade, because now it's a different trade. It's a different setup. The initial setup was I'm trying to get like a double bottom gap up here at that 50 Fibonacci level with the trade line. Ended up kind of turning into like a triple bottom at that level. Okay, that was the first trade. We got that trade. That was this. Okay, we got that move. Now I scaled out of my position. I had very small size at that point. And I said, guys, now look for us to consolidate above VWAP, okay, which we ended up doing. We consolidated above VWAP. This is a new pattern now. This is a new setup. So you've got to treat it like a new trade. So when I'm adding to this position, okay, I added to this position right there. If we failed, my stop loss on this is right there. If we get down, if we get down back below VWAP, okay, if we get back down below this consolidation, I'm out of that position. I'm out of the entire piece. You can't just hold on to that piece now all the way back down to the lows. It's a new setup. It's a new trade. So every candle that gets put in on the chart, you've got to take that information in, analyze it, dissect it, and come up with a new area that you can get long or short, whatever you're looking for, and more importantly, a new stop loss area on the piece that you're adding. Okay, and that's how you scale back. You get back into positions that you've previously scaled out of. It's a new setup. It is a new trade. Treat it that way. Okay, so that trade brought me well into the green, well then made up for my loss on BIG and the tier 1 on SAEX, and turned out to be a really nice day. Okay, and I just, added on top of the gains from yesterday. It was a good way to close out the week. I'm happy about it, going into the weekend in a good mood, and I will see you all back here in chat on Monday. Take care.